Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Ross-Ade Stadium. It is time for Boilermaker football, Purdue football 2023, the 100th season of football at Ross-Ade Stadium. I'm Tim Newton, along with Kelly Kitchel and Pete Quinn. And before we start this, I've heard this ugly rumor that you're retiring?
Well, I'm at work. I'm in real estate. A lot of people think this is my job. This is not my job. This is my hobby and my passion. But we bought a place in Naples 10 months ago. We had no grandchildren. In January, we'll have our 4th grandchild. And Susan wants to spend more time with the grandchildren, wants to spend more time in Naples. And, 32 years, great run. Yep. And you were with me for 31, right?
29. 29 out of 32,
and how many years are you and I've been together?
I think it's 12.
This a hell of a crew.
Yeah.
Unbelievable crew. And it's going to be very surreal this year, bittersweet.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to miss you guys the most about the broadcasting. But I got to be honest, it's going to be kind of fun hanging out the tailgates next year. Because I just left our tailgate and you got Adam Shank and Mike Allstott and about 10 of my teammates, and they're all there.
Yeah.
And we come up here and do our thing.
I would assume that Adam Schenk probably bought everything, right, after what he did last week at the PGA Championship.
He's doing okay.
He had a great run.
I think that Adam Shank, last name is Shank, as a professional golfer, is awesome.
Yeah.
The only thing that could have been better if his name was Adam Double Bogey. But Adam Shank is in the house.
I'm just glad it was not something that we said that drove you away. That I figured after all this time we've heard everything from each other. So
I will miss you guys a bunch, and I will stop by a couple of games a year to say hello.
I have no doubt. All right, let's talk football. The Boilermakers coming off an 8-6 season. They were the Big Ten West champion last year, lost in their bowl game. And people ask me, and I'm sure they ask both of you guys all the time, how's Purdue going to be this year? And my answer is I really don't know, because if you look at last season's roster, you lose, I think it was 45 guys either to graduation, transfer, injury. Basically, more than a third of this roster is brand new, Kitch, and we're going to see a lot of those guys on the field today.
Yeah, 45 gone. You have 85 scholarships total. So, you got to replace half your team. And, it is the same question. What's Boilers going to, man, I really don't know. I'm just as excited as every fan out there to see what's going to be put on the field. And the one thing I'm pretty confident about, though, I think, as most of us are, just even though he hasn't been here, I think we got a quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think the quarterback can do a lot of special things. So that's what I'm really, really excited about, seeing him in Ross-Ade, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, Pete, you played with a Hall of Famer in Mark Herman, and those guys make a big difference. And when you've got a guy under center who can make plays, and in this case, not only throwing the ball, but running the ball as well, it gives you an opportunity to be competitive every Saturday.
I like this team, and everything you said is accurate. We got a lot of kids. I put together the 2 deeps and put notes for each player, and I highlighted the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
It's half our 2 deeps.
Yeah.
So it is a new team, but I've watched several football games already this year. It's the same everywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
This is a new thing. It's going to become, it'll normalize at some point, but right now it's going to feel a little strange. I think Coach Walters did an amazing job finding some talent in places that he felt like he needed some talent. And I don't see a lot of weaknesses with this team. I'm not excited. I know you'll probably talk about some injuries. I'm not excited about the injuries, but for the most part, I don't see very many weaknesses in this team.
By the way, watching us today on Facebook Live on Purdue Athletics site, we appreciate you doing that. Let us know where you're watching, and if you have any questions for us. Amy has checked in from Marion, Iowa, so she wins the first in the city naming contest for us this year. You mentioned Hudson. We mentioned Hudson Card is going to play. Another guy that we know is going to play is Devin Mockabee. And Kitch, when you got a good quarterback and a really good running back, again, it gives you a great start to the season.
And we know Devin Mockabee's great, but I like that whole room. You got Devin Mockabee, you got Dylan Downing and Tyrone Tracy, and all 3 of them bring a little bit different juice to the field when they come in. Dylan Downing's going to be a power back, I think. You got Mockabee can make people miss in space. He's really shifty. And then Tyrone Tracy, I think, can do both. And plus, with Tyrone Tracy, he can catch the ball in the backfield. So that running back room of, if I'm Lamar Kennard, I am extremely excited about that room. And I know he is, about his guys coming out of there. So that's a strength of this team. We just got to find them some holes, right? So, we got to make sure the guys up front get them some space so they can do their thing.
Pete, we saw last year Devin Mockabee almost become the first freshman in Purdue football history to rush for 1,000 yards. In the offseason, he's put on more muscle. He's listed at 6 foot 200 pounds. And the first thing that Coach Ryan Walters did when he came to Purdue was put Devin Mockabee on scholarship.
Yeah, that was literally the first day of his job. He put him on scholarship, and it kind of went viral. It was pretty cool scene. But Kitch, I want to follow up a little bit with what Kitch said. We do have very, very talented running backs, and the 3 names he mentioned, they've been here.
Yeah.
They've been with the program. So we talk a lot about the transfers because it's a big deal nowadays, but we got a good base of Boilers that have been here for a couple of seasons. They spent the last offseason in the spring and summer with Ryan Walters and his coaching staff. There's some names in there that we don't know. We're going to know a lot more today, but there's a lot of names we do know, and we know what to expect from them.
The receiving core, again, some familiar names there. Abdur-Rahman Yassin will get a start at one spot. By the way, here's your trivia question of the day. Who was the only player on Purdue's football team to complete a pass for the Boilermakers last year? The answer is Abdur-Rahman Yassin, who threw a 26-yard completion in the bowl game against LSU. One of the few positives we're going to remember from that bowl game last year. But, Kitch, you've got Deion Burks, the fastest guy on the football team, and also T.J. Sheffield. So you mentioned some familiar names, and I think Deion Burks could be ready for a breakout season.
I think he has to be. And he's the fastest guy on the team. And with this offense, what you're going to see today, Boilermakers, is you're going to see Graham Harrell be able to get these guys ball in space where they can do something with the ball. There's not going to be trying to fit it into tight windows and have to go up and contest. It's going to be getting these guys, designing an offense so they can catch it, have some room, make some moves, let them use their athleticism, and get positive yardage. So I'm excited for Deion. I really think he can have a big one. And then, the guy you didn't mention, Mershawn Rice.
You're right.
He's a guy he's been very productive as well. He's strong, got strong hands. I think he can be a good possession receiver as well. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see these guys kind of meld together with this new type of offense. We've had a powerful offense in the past, but not one like this. You haven't seen one to go fast and get the guys in space and try to move the chains as quickly as possible.
Jamal Edrin, the Boilermakers, would have been their top receiver this year, out for the season with an injury. But again, that's a deep room in the wide receiver spot. The injuries, though, have hit the offensive line, Pete, because Gus Hartwig, we know, will not start the season at center, hoping to get him back sometime maybe in the middle of the year. And Josh Kaltenberger is out today. He was questionable coming in, but he will not play. That means the Boilermakers are going to go with Austin Johnson, who's a transfer from Colorado, on one side. The good news there, though, Muhammad Musa will play today. He was questionable coming in, but he will start at left tackle. So you got Musa at the left tackle, Preston Nichols, who's a transfer from UNLV at the left guard, Johnson, a transfer from Colorado at center, Jalen Grant, who's a transfer from Bowling Green at right guard, and Marcus Bowe at right tackle. The days of having offensive lines together for 4 or 5 years, I think, are gone.
No, it's changed so dramatically, and I watched Eric Miller yesterday playing for Louisville.
Yeah.
He had a good game. I remember my senior year, I was a starting center, 4-year starter. Steve McKenzie, 3-year starter at tackle. Dale Schron, 3-year starter guard. Henry Field, 3-year starter. Tom Gillespie, 4-year starter. That doesn't happen.
No.
It's these guys have to meld them, and I think that's one of the most crucial things that happens during the offseason is trying to find. I'd venture to guess they've got a dozen players that can play Big Ten college football in that offensive line room, but figuring out who goes where, which unit works. And then when you have an injury and it kind of shakes things up a little bit, we got a true freshman, Jimmy Liston, as a backup center.
Yeah.
Jimmy Liston's 18 years old. I mean, I don't think Jimmy's shaven yet. He might get some playing time today. So it's going to be interesting to see how they hold up. But I really like their new coaching staff.
Yep.
They're going to do fine.
Hi to Nancy in Kansas City and Bob in Lake Isabella, Michigan. Keep those cards and letters coming. Let us know where you are today as you watch us on Facebook Live. We should mention another injury today at tight end. Paul Peferi is out, and that means the Boilermakers will play Max Clare, who's a redshirt freshman, as the starter, and Drew Bibber. And we saw Drew quite a bit last season. He's a sophomore from Cedarburg, Wisconsin. So that's on the offensive side.
And Max Clare was going to start anyway.
Yes.
So
yes.
he really turned some heads. He's just a redshirt freshman.
And Garrett Miller not ready to play yet. Hopefully in the next week or two we'll get Garrett back, and I think he'll be awesome. A big part of this offense. All right, we know that Ryan Walters has a reputation as a defensive guru, and he's going to bring a new system into Purdue. You'll see 5 defenders on the line of scrimmage, 3 interior linemen, and what they call outside linebackers playing up on the line, either 1 or 2 inside linebackers, and then as many as 5 players in the secondary. I think two guys to watch out for at the outside linebacker spot, Nick Scorton, and for Boilermaker fans, the artist formerly known as Nick Carraway, he decided to take his dad's name, and so Nick Scorton is a sophomore from Texas, and then Kadron Jenkins on the other side. And those guys have a bet, legal of course, and play money, who's going to get the first quarterback sack this year.
I'll tell you what, I think those two guys are the best players on our defense, I believe. I mean, it's no question to me. I think those are the guys that and they probably have the most responsibility of this defense, because they have to be able to play the run, set the edge, pass rush. Plus, there's going to be times when they're in space and they're covering flats. They're having to get to the curl area. They're going to have to really be athletic and do a lot of things within this. So you got to have your best guys in that, I think, in Ryan Walters' scheme.
Pete, the good news there, you've got depth at those positions. You've got Corday Sidnor, who I think really came on last year, late in his freshman season. And a guy that we're excited to see, Will Helt, a true freshman from Carmel, 6'6" and 250. This kid looks the part coming right out of the crate.
Yeah, he's not a freshman except by class. He's a player. In fact, we got a few kids. I'm sure you're going to talk about our safety too. But I like this defense, and it reminds me a lot, and Tim, you were here with me when I played. Remember the junk defense?
Absolutely.
People always, from our era, they remember Mark Herman and Bart Burrell and All-American Dave Young. But we had the number 2 ranked defense in the country at the end of 1979. That was this defense. They called it the junk defense, but it was the same thing. And when you talk about those outside linebackers, well, that was Keena Turner and Tom Kingsbury.
He was pretty good.
They were two of the best players in history here. So this defense, I think, is going to surprise some people. I think they're going to be very excited what happens. There's some unknowns, especially cornerback, and I know you're going to talk about the defensive backfield, but there's a lot of excitement in that room too. They think they got some special players.
A lot of depth up front in the middle. We'll start Isaiah Nichols, who's a transfer from Arkansas, Cole Brevard, who came last year from Penn State, and then Malik Langham, who has played at Florida and Vanderbilt. So again, this is the state of college football in 2023. You're starting 3 interior guys defensively. Kitch come from other universities.
Yeah, but what I like about them is when you look at that group from behind, they're all wide, they're all big, and they take up a lot of space. And that's what you got to have in this defense. You got to have some bodies in there that can take up these offensive linemen, so you can leave that middle linebacker free to either rush or be able to go sideline to sideline and be untouched. And I think that's what these 3 guys will do. They're wide, they're strong, they're big. They've got to be able to take up that interior space so that it makes it extremely difficult for teams to run between the tackles.
A lot of depth there. We mentioned Suleiman Pak as a name that we've seen in the past. Joe Anderson came here last year, transfer from South Carolina. DeMar J. Lewis, who was out last year with an injury, is back, and we'll see him. Mo Omenode from right across the street at West Lafayette High School. Joe Strickland has a chance to get on the field this year. Another guy that I think we're all anxious to see, Jeffrey Mba, M''BA. He's a transfer from Auburn. He's from Gabon originally, and he's a guy that came in really highly touted.
Every player you just mentioned is really, really good. Is a high-level Power 5 conference player. That is a lot of depth. That means we can keep fresh legs in there. I do need to say, just because it's his birthday, Cole Brevard.
Yeah.
Today is his birthday. It's also Nick
Scorton?
No, Nick Hardwick's birthday.
Oh. I'm trying to think of Nick, and it wasn't Nick Nolte. I know that.
No, it wasn't Nick Nolte, so it's Nick's. And yesterday was Aiden O'Connell's.
Well, there you go.
And we may want to mention that Aiden O'Connell's the talk of the NFL this year.
Yes, he is.
And I think that's cool as heck.
Yeah. Inside linebacker might be the thinnest spot on the team. The good news there is you only run 2 inside linebackers, and most of the time we may see just 1 linebacker on the field. O.C. Brothers, who saw a lot of playing time last year, is going to be in there. And Yanni Karloftis, there's been a lot of talk, Kitch, about him, and you're pretty familiar with Yanni Karloftis. He's in the starting lineup today, sophomore from West Lafayette, and a chance to see what he can do.
Yeah, Yanni's gonna. I'm so happy for him and excited for him. That guy, he's battled. He lost his senior year due to an injury, hamstring injury. He's been battling injuries all the way through, and I think he's finally. I know he's finally healthy. He's 240 pounds. He looks great. He was on our sideline of a game last weekend. He looks great. I'm so excited for Yanni to get his opportunity out here to show what he can do. It's been a long road for him to get healthy enough and ready to go. So yeah, between him and OC, I think. There's not, like you said, it's a thin room. There's not a ton of depth, but I think those are 2 really good football players.
Clyde Washington's another guy we'll see. We saw Clyde play quite a bit last season. Cornerbacks are new. You've got Marquise Wilson from Penn State on one side and Markevius Brown, a transfer from Mississippi. They'll be in the starting lineup today. The safeties, you got the old and the new. Sanusi Kane, who's going to be playing with a cast today, probably the first couple of games on his left hand. And then a guy that we're really excited to see, Dylan Thieneman. Pete, true freshman, following in the footsteps of brothers Jacob and Brennan. And I think the two older brothers would admit Dylan's the best athlete of the three.
Yeah, apparently he's one of the best athletes in the conference. Everything I've read about him, it's the only thing that's better than his athleticism is his work ethic. And he's already become a leader. And I don't think people understand how impressive it is for a freshman to come in and be considered a leader by this football team. But he is. He leads by example. He works out really hard. I've heard he's the second fastest guy.
Second fastest guy behind Deion Burks.
Yep, behind Burks, and that's very, very impressive as well. So I'm excited to see what he can do, but they've been talking about him like he deserves that number one spot.
Kitch, I mentioned usually the Boilermakers will play 5 defensive backs. What they call the star, or that we know as the nickel, is going to be Cam Allen. And we know Cam Allen, one of the all-time interception leaders, had an up and down season last year. And I think he's trying to be more consistent, but he's a guy that needs to have a big year.
Well, he's got a nose for the football, and he seems to be able to find it, right? And so he's had some really special plays, but you're right. There's been times that he's been lost out there too. So I think if he can be more consistent and be a guy that really understands that star role, I think he can have a really special season.
The kicking game, we got a lot of new faces in there. Ben Freehill is going to take over for Mitchell Finneran, who had an outstanding year last year. We saw Ben on kickoffs. Transfer from Oklahoma State. Pete, he's got a big leg. The question is, when you get a few thousand people in here, will he respond to having the lights on and having to kick under pressure?
That's why I always, at the very beginning of the show, you said when people ask you how Purdue's going to be, your honest answer is, who knows?
Who knows?
Because no one does, including Coach Ryan Walters at this point. He's got to see the plays perform, and that's one of the critical things. Not only a new kicker, but a new snapper.
And holder.
And that's the snapper, particularly, for 4 years we hadn't had to worry about.
We had Nick Zucchino, who seemed like he was here forever. And Nick Zucchino is like the guy that you want to be your baseball umpire, because if you never talk about him, that means they're doing their job. And we didn't talk about Nick Zucchino very much the last few years.
Than when he made tackles, because the kid was he was always spot on. So that's a tough job. Hopefully they've got it figured out, but we'll see. You got to get him in game conditions.
So Nick Taylor is the new long snapper. Brendan Cropsey, who is the backup punter, is the holder. The returning punter is Jack Ansel. And Jack, I think, Kitch, we could see the big improvement last year from freshman to sophomore year, and we're expecting the same sophomore to junior.
I mean, we know he's got a monster leg. We talked about this his freshman year. Right? We'd see him just booming punts out of there, and then he'd come out in the game. I think sometimes when he was a freshman, the lights were too bright in some instances, and he really struggled on putting the ball where he wanted to and kind of doing his thing. Last year he made a huge jump. He kicked the ball big when he needed to kick the ball big. He did his rugby when he needed a rugby and put it where it needed to be. I thought he did a great job, and he grew as a player and as a person last year too. And I'm really excited to see what he can do this year.
Let's say hello to Ed in Knightstown, Indiana, Bill in Champaign, Illinois, Jeff in San Francisco, and former Boilermaker standout Lance Olson, who played on the first Rose Bowl team, is watching us as well. So
nice.
Hello
Where's
to everybody. He didn't say.
Okay.
Right now he's in front of his computer. We know that. Let's talk a little bit about Fresno State, because we do have an opponent here, and similar situation with the Bulldogs today. They lost their quarterback, Jake Hainers, in the NFL now with the New Orleans Saints. They lost their top running back. They lost their top 2 receivers. What they do have is, Pete, is a successful head coach. Jeff Tedford, in his 5th season at Fresno State, but his 16th overall, he's won wherever he's gone. Yeah,
and that's where it starts. It starts with the head coach, and they've got a winner there. And they've got talent. They're like every other football school. They get some transfers in. This one of the receivers, Jalen Gill, had a very nice career at Boston College and was one of the most highly recruited receivers coming out of high school. He originally went to Ohio State.
Yeah, he was on the 2018 Ohio State team, although he was redshirting that season.
And he was considered one of the top receivers in the country. So they've got some talent, but they also have a lot of kids from California, you and I talked about, but they also have some kids that you can't even find them on the database.
Yeah.
We talk about, we get 3-star, 4-star athletes here. They have several starters that have 0 stars. So they, talent-wise, they've got some talent, but they don't have the depth that Purdue has. And I think one of the things that is our biggest advantage And we saw it a couple years ago when we played Nevada, who come out of the same conference, and we had to go across the country and dominated in the first half. Totally dominated. We looked like the best team in the country. We had nothing left in the second half. Well, they're playing, their next 5 games are at 7:30 at night.
Right.
In Pacific.
Right.
So 10:30 here, they're going to be playing at 6 a.m. or 9 a.m. their time.
Yeah.
That's got to have an impact.
One other name, a player who's been here before in Ross-Ade Stadium, their starting center, Jacob Isaiah, is a transfer from Michigan State, and he did play in the game here 2 years ago when Michigan State was undefeated, came in number 2 and lost that one. I think the strength, though, of Fresno State's going to be on the defensive side of the ball, and the guys that we're going to be watching in the secondary, Cam Lockridge, who is a junior college transfer, also played at Hawaii, Carlton Johnson, and Maurice Norris Jr., really talented back half of this Fresno State defense.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. You know, last year Fresno State started off rough, and they ended on a 10-game winning streak, and had a really, good ending to it. But here's what you're coming into right now. You don't know what Purdue's going to do, really. I mean, there's no history. Are they going to do? Is the offense going to look like West Virginia's? What is it? I don't know. I mean, so that's where, if you're Fresno State, you've been watching film from everywhere, trying to figure out, you watch the kids that were here last year, Purdue film. You try to watch where Graham was. You try to watch where Coach Walters was. I mean, everything is, you're trying to piece things together. So it's going to be just probably a lot of base secondary and trying to have you guys make plays.
The linebackers are good. Malachi Langley and Lavelle Bailey make some big plays, but a little bit inexperienced up front at some spots, so we'll see if Purdue can take advantage of that. But it's a Fresno State team that, as we mentioned, started 1-4 a season ago. They got it going. They won their bowl game easily over Washington State, and they come in here on a 9-game winning streak, which is the 3rd longest winning streak in the country. So you know that they're going to come in, and they've always had the motto at Fresno State, we'll play anybody, anytime, anywhere, and today's further proof of that.
Yeah, and that conference tends to come up and bite Power 5 schools all the time, and people tend to forget. Brigham Young used to be in that conference.
Yeah.
They've had some very, very good football teams that came out of there, and they got some California kids. They're going to be fast.
Yeah.
They're going to be athletic, and so big plays could make a difference in today's game. You got to keep the big plays down on their side of the ball. Hopefully we make them on our side of the ball. But man for man, pound for pound, depth-wise, Purdue should win this football game.
112 players on Fresno State's roster. 87 are from the state of California, so you can tell that's where the recruiting base is. All right, fellas, we'll say hi to Bob in Grayling, Michigan, and then we're going to go with our picks to click. And Mr. Soon-to-be retiree, we're going to give you first honors this year.
Well, since I get to go first, I'm just going to go with Hudson Card, because that's all they talk about is Hudson Card. Not just his ability to throw the football, his ability to scramble. He looks like he could play in the NFL right now. And this is his debut, so I'm excited to see what he can do. I'm gonna do a little bit different, because I know you guys are going to take somebody on defense. I'm going to go with Cole Brevard. And not just because it's his birthday. That kid went to Carmel High School. He is outstanding. He was #1 player ranked in Indiana. Went to Penn State early in his career, didn't play a whole lot. He transferred over a couple years ago. He's a Boilermaker now. And that kid is 340 pounds if he's an ounce. I think he wants to be a great football player, and I think today you're going to see a different Cole Brevard. I think he had some flashes of greatness last year, but I think he's going to dominate.
Mr. Kitchel.
I'm going to go ahead and take him then. I'm going to go with Mock. I mean, I think Devin Mockabee can have a really, really good day. I think especially with the way that Hudson Card can use his legs and be a weapon out of the backfield, that you're going to have to really be sound on defense and have to account for both of them in the backfield. So I think Devin Mockabee can be the guy. And even though I'm probably going to say his name wrong all season, Nick Scorton, I'm excited. I think he's a big-time NFL. I believe he's a first or second round draft pick when he comes out. So I think he is just he might be hands down the best player on our defense, maybe our team. And I'm excited to see him play. And only a sophomore. I'm excited to see him play.
All right, I will take Deion Burks, the fastest guy on the team, playing against a fast team. It's a good matchup for him, and I think Deion Burks has a big day today. And I mentioned the bet Scorton and Jenkins have with each other. You took Scorton, I'll take Jenkins.
Right.
We'll see if Cadron can have a big game today. So Boilermakers against Fresno State. It's going to kick off at 12:01. We'll be back here in 2 weeks at Ross-Ade Stadium for the first of several night games this year when the Syracuse Orange come to town. 2 weeks from today, about 7:30 kickoff on that one, correct? 7:30, I believe. And that means we'll have our Facebook Live segment at 6 o'clock. So don't forget to tune in to us on the Purdue Sports Radio Network, and also on Purdue Athletics. We'll be behind the mic, so if you want to look at us while you're watching the game or listening to the game, you can do that as well. So for Kelly Kitchel, for Pete Quinn, I'm Tim Newton. We'll see you next time. Boiler up.
Boiler up.
Boiler up.